So, Lincoln, I've known you for years now, and I've often told you that you have old man wisdom with a baby face. You know this. You've given me permission to even say this, but you've got to tell everyone listening what's a story that really backs this up that you do have a lot of wisdom, but you might have a baby face.
Well, I don't know about stories of wisdom, Travis, but I do have quite a few of the baby face reminders. I'd say a very vivid one was a couple years back. Emily, my wife, and I were out doing yard work in our new house that we had just bought.
In your house, to be clear,
We,
yes.
yes, we bought a house and we're getting it ready, getting used to the new neighborhood. And we had some neighbors walk up and they're like, "Hey, welcome. It's so good to meet you guys. Are your parents home? We'd love to meet your whole family." And we're like, "No, this is just us."
Hey, you will appreciate it, I am sure, when you are in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. So you're going to be the one laughing then. But hey, I am convinced, and this is why I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. You've got a ton of wisdom despite not having to shave. So just know that.
Well, I appreciate that. I remember, I got to say this real quick. There was so much
Please.
jealousy, Travis, when I was first starting out, because you would make so many self-deprecating jokes about your baldness. And in these meetings, I mean, clients love it. And I was like, if I could just be bald. And then Emily was like,
Don't
Lincoln,
wish that upon yourself,
look,
sir.
she was like, babe, if you go bald, you can't grow facial hair. So you're going to have a lot of
I
issues.
will
So.
say, Lincoln, that bald on you. I don't know if it looks great on any of us, but I think keep that wonderful set of hair.
Let's be honest. Life's messy. Decisions are complex. And it's not all black and white. But these are the decisions that shape our growth. Welcome to the tension. Let's get into it.
Today we have an exciting one. Today we will be diving into the tension of independence and influence. Is it that when we give up some of our independence, we lose or gain influence and vice versa? We'll be talking about that today, and we're super excited. We have Mr. Lincoln Rock here. Lincoln Rock serves as the vice president in Minnesota for 49 Financial. He has been one of the rising stars over the last 5 years in the organization and one of the biggest and greatest emerging leaders that we've got. But also, one of the things that has been really interesting is he's led this idea of this Gen Z mindset within our company. He seems to relate to that. He has a lot of wisdom around it. And so I am really excited not only to learn from him and just his wisdom in general, but also from a Gen Z perspective as he thinks about this idea of the tension between independence and influence. Lincoln Rock, welcome to the tension.
Travis, thank you. Grateful to be here. Looking forward to it.
So, Lincoln, as always, we're going to start with a little background before we go into the actual tension itself. So, give us a backstory. Tell us about Lincoln Rock. Tell us where you come from. What's gotten you to this moment in time?
Yeah, well, I give you the Reader's Digest version. So up from the Twin Cities for most of my life, and met my wife in college. We were both maxing out our athletic potential at the Division III level at the Buena Vista University in Northwest Iowa,
Heck
and
yeah.
so sports were a huge thing. Family very very influential, and I'm sure there'll be parts throughout that I'll connect and share about just the influence and impact that they've had on my life. But ended up in college proposing to Emily, who was a couple years older and wanted to go to medical school. And so as soon as
Okay.
she got into medical school, I realized, man, I better propose to this girl before she becomes a doctor, or she'll be way out of my league. So thankfully, she said yes. We did a little bit of long distance as she was starting medical school down in Texas, and then we got married summer of 2020, and I joined her down there. So that was the start of new chapter. That was when I got connected to 49, and the rest is history. So that's a little bit on the backstory of how we had met. And then 8 months ago, we welcomed our first baby girl into the world.
Let's go.
So name is Nora, and crawling around, keeping us on our toes, which has been a ton of fun. We're super grateful for this season.
Now, let me get this straight. And for those listening, a baby girl less than 1 year old and your wife is still in med school?
So done with med school, but in residency. So she's now in her
Residency.
final year of residency, which for anybody that knows that world, it's arguably more work than medical school. And so, yeah, it's keeping us on our toes.
How are you guys doing it? I mean, this is kind of perfect for our attention today. But before going in there, I'm just curious. That is a lot for a young couple to go through and to balance.
Yeah, well, first I'd say, I mean, I have an amazing wife. She's incredible with all that she's managing. And when we first found out that she was pregnant, we just kind of looked at each other. We're like, how are we going to do this? And we're incredibly grateful. Amazing family support. We have such good community with our church and friends around. So it's undoubtedly a team effort, and it's one of those things. Each year we've stepped into new seasons with new challenges, and usually looking ahead, if you let it, it can be anxiety inducing. It can be like, oh my gosh, how do we even move forward? But you take it day by day and you mature, you grow. And the harder things just get easier with time. And we've definitely lived that both on the personal side and the professional side.
I think there's already a gold nugget there. The harder things get easier with time. Having watched you for the last 5 years, Lincoln, yes, I think you guys have. It'd have been interesting back in 2020 version of Lincoln if he was supposed to deal with what you were dealing with in 25 of just balancing all these priorities, all these responsibilities, all the things you're wanting to do. You have definitely been inspiring in the way that you've done that, and frankly, that you have given it time and that you've been really honest about the hardship, because I do think that's one of the first parts of it is like, you got to be honest, it is hard. And I think you've done that wonderfully. But if you could stick in there, it's amazing. And you just learn new rhythms, you learn new ways of doing things, all of that. So I think in general, I think that's a good thing for folks to hear. Is we're all going through different versions of hardship. And I think it's really neat to start there. But the podcast today, this idea of the tension between independence, right? This pursuit of autonomy and I get to do whatever I want, that you've told me, especially as a Gen Z person, is like wildly important to your generation, versus influence, right? And influence can be defined as so many things, right? Impact, right? The way in which that you leave a mark on the world, those types of things. And so, in your words, Lincoln, I mean, talk to us about this tension, right? I mean, how do you think the balancing act that we're all trying to do between getting more independence and then getting influence, how would you define that for us?
Yeah, it's very much a nuanced topic. There's so many different rabbit holes and areas that we can go down. And for me personally, in what I've really lived into and felt and wrestled with over the last, over 5 years, even throughout college, was I had grown up and seen the benefit and value of building towards independence or having that autonomy. I saw
Yeah.
my dad take, a couple of really bold steps professionally where he took on risk of what was more comfortable, what was known, in order to step into something that was unknown but had the opportunity to create more independence and flexibility. And it was a very clear and vivid memory for me in middle school when he kind of went from the corporate world to starting his own smaller firm, and the flexibility it created for him to coach my baseball team growing up, the flexibility for him to be home sooner and get to experience more of those moments. And not that he wasn't very intentional and loving and caring and all the things prior. He would have just said, hey, this has afforded me a little bit more flexibility to do the things that I want with the people that I care about and live
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
our values more fully. And so that, I think, gave me the entrepreneurial spark in college, and was reading, all these books and listening to all these podcasts around, man, what does it look like to build a business or create impact in an area that you can work hard to build a foundation, and then have the independence or the autonomy or the flexibility to scale it up or down based
Yeah.
on where your family is at and based on all these different things that, I didn't know if I'd, get married or have kids, but I wanted that. And so those were things that I would say were very motivating for me in school. And sometimes, I know in prior podcasts you've talked about Tim Keller a lot. He's one of the most influential authors and speakers that has really touched my life. Counterfeit Gods for me was one of
Yeah.
those things. As I reflect back on it, that desire for independence and autonomy, if made an ultimate thing, can be
Yeah.
dangerous. And
No
and
doubt.
so the other side of it, and why I think talking about influence matters so much as the tension for it, is usually the most impact, the most influence comes at the expense of comfort, right? Like giving up comfort to go
Yeah.
and create impact. And I saw that very clearly in my mom's life and
Yeah.
career, where she, one of the most impactful people to in my life. She
Yeah.
stayed home and helped raise my brothers and I. As we got out of the house, she volunteered at a nonprofit, and eventually, you know, um, is now the executive director and runs the thing. And I remember vividly a moment in college where I was in, all those podcasts and books about autonomy and building business and things of that nature. And I had a conversation with my mom where she was just visibly tired, visibly just drained, and sharing these stories. The nonprofit is a youth outreach organization for at-risk youth in the community. And she volunteers, does community groups and things, and particularly was walking through life with a group of high school girls. And there's a lot of things that they were wrestling with. There's some middle of the night phone calls, instances where she's having to intervene at, in some very serious issues. And I just remember asking her, like, Mom, you don't have to do this. Like,
Yeah.
it's affecting you. It's, from like an energy standpoint, you're less flexible and don't have as much
Yeah.
autonomy.
You're effectively telling her, you could choose independence here and not have to worry. You could have complete autonomy away from all of this, right? Keep going.
And that's exactly it, because, fortunately, they were in a position at their age where my mom wasn't working for the money, and she was on a part-time salary anyways and working probably 60 hours a week in that specific season.
Yeah.
And she looks at me, and there was just a peace and a calm and just a soft tone of just like, it's a good question. But life is not just about comfort and what is, easy and balanced. And she's like,
Yeah.
sometimes the most influence comes when it's messiest and true. Like, she's like, for these girls, most of them have grown up in a life where, parents have left the house, or there's very little stability or consistency at all. And she's like, this has been a challenging yet so fulfilling of a journey to get to walk through life. See,
Yeah.
with each week of coming back and being there, regardless of the messiness or the challenges, she said the trust, the bond that has been created, the doors that have opened for real healthy conversation
Yeah.
is something that she'd never change. And she's like, this is where the Lord has me today. It may not
Mhm.
be the same in 5 years. And
Sure.
in that note, none of my brothers or I had kids yet, but I was like, don't you want to be a grandma and all these things? And she's like,
Yeah.
we don't have, you don't have kids yet. And so
Yeah.
that may all
Right.
change, and it's okay if it does. However,
Yeah.
this is where I'm at. And,
So good. So
and
good.
so that started to really change how I viewed autonomy versus impact, or independence versus influence.
Well, I mean, I think that's wonderful. And by the way, it sounds like you have amazing parents. I mean, not the point of today, but to double down on even a part of your dad's story and then your mom's. It is so true that there's a season for everything. I think it gets dangerous if we don't plan, right? I think that we all need to be planning because that directionally tells us where we're going. And at the same token, yeah, I think she said it really well. Like, Well, if it's not happening yet, you guys don't have kids, you have these things. Well, all we know is the here and now today. Like you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, even though you could plan 5 years out. And I think that in and of itself is its own maybe tangent. We could go on a little bit later on this idea of independence and influence, because I do think that it will change. I mean, every couple of years there may be a total shift. But let's go back to it's interesting because I said on the front end, and you mentioned it is so nuanced, because here's what's interesting about this. Like it does actually cut both ways, right? As I'm hearing you speak, your dad's story was actually this: he chose independence in a job to get more influence with his kids, right? Whereas your mom actually gave up independence, right, to go do something that's really, really, really hard that she didn't have to do, wasn't for money, none of that, to gain influence. I mean, this is just, I mean, this is a lot, right? That's why I think it's such great tension. But let's back up for a second. If I made you, Lincoln, define the term independence, give me your one or two, sentences. What is independence? And remember, I'm asking this not of what other people say, like for you, like this Gen Z perspective you talk about a lot.
Yeah, I think how I personally define that just in the context of my life and family is having the freedom to do the things you want to do with the people that you care about. And that, like, in its simplest form, would say, hey, like, it's the freedom to have choice, which already is a gift and a blessing. And
Yes.
it is something that isn't, it shouldn't be an entitlement or an expectation, but I would say gaining independence, it is a gift. And that's personally, yeah, how I would define that.
That's so good. Yeah, I mean, freedom, right? Meaning you get to choose what you do each day, right? Autonomy in the sense that independence naturally means that you get a more autonomous life. And I think I heard you say something before, flexibility, maybe. This idea that like every day you just have a lot of flexibility. Boy, that sounds really attractive, right? And so it's funny. I'm going back to your dad saying, I'm like, well, yeah, that's why he chose it. That's amazing. But then I go back to your mom's story and I'm like, she actually chose to like say no to all three of those. Like she gave up autonomy and flexibility and freedom, literally gave up all those and actually introduced pain. It's such an interesting concept, right? Let's go to the other one before I go into your parents' story. And then I want to get to you and Emily's story because there's a lot to unpack here. Talk to me about this term influence. Like influence to Lincoln means what?
Yeah, I think for me, impact is woven into that, right? An ability to create tangible impact in the world. For Emily and I, just to go on a little bit of a tangent and not give you a super short and sweet answer to it. When we
Yeah.
were engaged, we were really excited. Emily was going down this path to becoming a doctor. She had known she always wanted to do that. And I had no clue what I wanted to do other than, some of the little things that I mentioned earlier of entrepreneurship and business. But we settled on this word that really connected with both of us, and that was restoration. This idea of helping mend things that are broken and
Mm,
cultivating beauty in the world and helping to restore things to how they ought to be. And
yes.
for Emily, it in many ways was very clearly defined of, hey, medicine, you have a unique opportunity to help people with their physical health and things that are broken, or being proactive and helping to ensure that people can operate and live and do the things that they want to and stay healthy. And for me, I think when I see blood, there's a lot of reasons I was not going to be a doctor, but I was trying to figure out what is that for me where I can have
Yeah.
true influence and impact. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think it came back to this idea of, hey, I want to do great work, right? I want to pursue excellence in whatever that craft is.
Yeah.
And for me, I want it to better the world, right, in some form or fashion. And as I've now read about a lot of Gen Z and why am I the way that I am and what are some of the trends, that means a lot to the broader generation that I was raised up in, seeing, hey, work for the sake of work is just toil. And
Yeah.
if it's just to make money,
Yeah. Forget
you
that. Right.
forget that. And um, it's not that we're a lazy generation that doesn't want to do anything, but we
Yeah.
want to have that work matter, right? We want to be able to put our name on something and say, hey, me as a part of the greater whole is getting to help change the world and create beauty and restoration. And so when I think influence, I think the deeper layers of stuff that really matters and stuff that can be lasting and eternal in value. And again, what I've lived and seen often is usually that's messy. Usually the ideal of what you think it's going to be awesome and all the things, you'll
Yes.
have bits and pieces of that. And 60, 70, 80% of the time it's toil, right? And it still is
Yeah.
hard work.
No
And
doubt.
you got to be able to lean into the messiness there.
Yeah, I think to illustrate your point, the book "The Gift of Disillusionment" to me is one of the most powerful books on that concept of, okay, I'm going to define the impact and influence that I want. However, that is going to be at some point along the way, I will find myself in disillusionment where I realize I wanted that, but who knew it was going to be this hard? Who knew it was going to be this messy? Who knew like I couldn't just like solve world hunger? I really wanted to. There's a lot of things that I have to figure out along the way. And it's so interesting. And this is just kudos to you and Emily as you've continued on your influence and impact journey. Is the book will say that there's only two routes you can take when you hit that point where realism sets in, where it's no longer just this fairy tale dream, I'm going to change the world and it's going to be awesome, but you see what it will actually take and how messed up the world is to get it there. And just all the flawed people involved, all the things. You can either be someone that turns into a cynic, which is what the majority of people, right, choose to be. And they just kind of like, that thing stinks. I'm no longer going to be a part of it. Hate those organizations that do it, right? All of those things. Or you can choose to say, okay, this is a gift. I now understand more fully what it will take to do this and why maybe impact hasn't happened in the way that in my mind maybe a few years ago when I didn't know all this, right? I get it a little more. I'm still pushing forward. My why isn't changing. I'm still going forward. And I think like, and that's effectively what you guys have continued to do. So, I think this idea of independence, right, and influence, I really appreciate where you're going with all of your stories. Let's go back to your folks for a second, and then I do want to hit on you and Emily. So, we talked about this a few minutes ago with your dad. So your dad effectively chose a job that would give more flexibility, that would give more autonomy, these things. And then he chose influence to him, right? What is influence? Kind of like you said, it's what do you value? I mean, that's effectively it. Like you just have to put down, this is what I value in life. This is what stirs my heart. Great. That's probably the influence you should seek. And for him, it was y'all kids. I mean, that's what it sounds like. And so talk to me about like that side of this tension, how you have seen either through his life, or maybe you could even go into some of your life and decisions you've made where you've seen this idea of pursuing independence can gain you more influence. And we'll flip it to taking it away, and independence can give more influence. So let's stay there for a second though. What have you seen from his story or your story?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, Travis. And a couple of weeks ago, I actually got to do some fly fishing out in Montana with my dad, and so we had some airplane time.
Oh, nice.
And so I was just picking his brain on some of these concepts as well, and getting to just understand. And I had told him what I remember was the middle school when he made that transition kind of from corporate um, to having more independence there. But he would have said, hey, the decision that took more quote unquote risk and faith, in many ways, was back when I was about 10 months old. And
Mm,
they had, my older brother was about a year and a half, 2 years old.
okay.
I was, brand new. And then they were pregnant with my little bro. So we were boom, 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 three boys in the family.
Yeah.
But my dad was a history teacher and coach in small town Iowa, and his dream was always to farm with his dad. He grew up on the family farm, and back in the 90s, it was really tough economy and interest rates and things where it just wasn't feasible to do that. And
Yeah.
so he went to some local diner with my mom, and He's like, hey, I think, with three boys coming, I got to find a job that can maybe provide a little bit more opportunity. I think I should go to med school. And my mom was a nurse by trade and very, very loving and kind. And she's like, hey, let's maybe look at some other options and ideas. Your bedside manner may not, help you live into that as well. But what about law school? And so, for whatever reason, he's like, all right, I'll sit for the LSAT and see how that goes. And the rest is history with kind of making that shift. But that was with, again, two young boys, one on the
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
and went left for the big city of Minneapolis, up in Minnesota,
Yeah.
and wasn't making an income. Right, going to law school, he was doing a little
Yeah.
part-time stuff. My mom was
Oh
working
man.
with the little babies. It was a huge risk in many ways, and knowing how much they value family and parenting, all the things. I'm sure it was stressful, even in the stance of, man, are we just working and
Yeah.
to work, and we want to be more present? But it was built with this lens of, hey, where do we want to go, and what
Yeah.
is, what do we think is best for the family? And so that they would point to and say, hey, that was really a challenging decision, but getting to live into that, live through it. They grew a ton, matured a ton in their relationship, as they would say it,
Yeah.
and it set the foundation for the rest of life and raising us and all the things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good, Lincoln. Actually, it tells me a lot more as to why you and Emily in your current journey of her in residency, you building out a team and a city and all these things, and having a baby. I guess it just is in your genes. And so, yeah, it's so interesting generationally how we take things and we don't realize whether good or bad, right, from our parents or our parents' parents. And I think that's really interesting in your story, how that's just kind of interwoven in your gene pool of just being able to handle these hard things and making these types of choices. So I think that's really awesome. So Lincoln, let's stay on this side. Like, when has been a time for you that you have chosen more independence to gain more influence? Can you think of a time in which you're like, actually, I pursued autonomy, flexibility, these things to get more influence here? Like, what's something in your personal life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, as I've lived it, I'm gonna go the professional route just because that's
Sure.
freshest over the last 5 years.
I think it's a great
And
example. Yeah.
I would tell you, stepping into 49 Financial. So when I was, Emily was in medical school. We knew that she was not making an income. I was trying to figure out, well, what do I want to do? Logically, a lot of people were giving advice of, hey, you're only going to be in Texas for a season. You'll probably come back up to the Midwest. Don't get tied into something that you think could be long term. Just get something to pay the bills, and that'll be great.
Yeah.
And then I ended up doing financial planning that is very entrepreneurial. There was not
Yes.
the
Yes.
analyst salary that you're stepping into and clocking in,
Sure.
clocking out. And
Yeah.
that was one of those moments where I said, hey, this is a path that I believe will help me get to that independence, to ultimately have even more influence throughout the rest of my life. And I
Yeah.
think the challenge in that was, we knew we're giving up independence for a season.
Tell me more
And
about that. What does that mean? What are you
so,
giving when you say you're giving it up? What independence did you feel like you're giving up versus the other jobs you could have chosen?
yeah, so if you would have asked me what independence, or the most comfortable decision would have been coming out of school, it would have been, finding a pretty casual, easy job coming out. I can
Yeah.
have dinner ready for Emily when she gets home from medical school, and we go for a walk, and I have no stress or anything, and bills are paid. That's what, in my mind, the short term ideal would have been. And
Yeah, it's almost as if early on for you, independence was actually defined as a word we haven't said yet, which is just comfort. Like
totally.
like it. beginning, it was the more comfort I can have, that means the more independence I have. And yeah, I mean, I may not have any influence. I'll just kind of do my thing for a while, like they told me to. But yet, you chose something that maybe is one of the more uncomfortable jobs a person can choose out of school.
No doubt. And on that point, I think I was new marriage. I was like,
Yeah,
haven't done this whole husband thing before.
sure.
And my like the influence for me, it was like, I want to be a really good present husband, intentional,
Yeah,
loving, caring.
totally,
And I had
totally.
no frame of reference for what that could look like in different contexts. And so stepping into that career search, I vividly remember talking to Emily and pretty much, I'd gone through the interview process with 49 Financial, and I was like, this is the first thing that I'm actually excited about. The people here, the vision for what you can create, the long term delayed gratification aspect of it. These are people that I want to become like. And I was like, am I absolutely insane for wanting to do this when Emily's, in medical school? And so I was like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to Emily. She's going to be like, yeah, you're immature. You're kind of an idiot for wanting to do that. Let's give it a couple years and there'll be a better time to do it.
Yeah.
And instead, it was one of the reasons I'm so grateful that she's my wife. She looks at me, she's like, babe, this is the first thing you've been excited about. Why would you make a decision based on fear?
Ooh.
And I was like, that's one of those gotcha moments, new marriage. And you're like, oh man, you're right. And she's
Wow.
like, think about it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? She's
Yeah.
like, if you give it your all and
Yeah.
um, worst case scenario, it doesn't work out. There's a lot of analyst positions or whatever that you can
Yeah.
land on your
Yeah.
feet. But she's like, think about if it does work and we're able to grow and manage through it. You get to this spot where you have built the foundation of your career. I've made it through
Yeah.
med school, and she helped kind of reframe not just making decisions based on fear and what's in the
Yeah.
short term, and say, well,
Yeah.
what could be from an independent standpoint. And that was really what gave me the confidence to step into it.
Yeah. That is so good.
Yeah, so then I would say getting started for both of us, it was a demanding season. We had to focus on quality time versus quantity of time. Right?
Yeah.
She'd get
Yeah.
home from med school, and then she'd have flashcards of memorizing every part of the body and muscles and things that I had
Yeah.
no clue
Sure.
about. And I was trying to figure out, how do I build my business and work in a professional setting and
Yes.
navigate all of those nuances. And I would have said, hey, this does not feel like
Yeah.
independence. And
Come on. Come on.
also, I was getting to experience a level of influence, a level of growth that I was just continually reminded of, like, this is where I want to be, because growth and comfort never overlap.
Yeah. Ooh, there's a line.
As I was talking to mentors, even before the career search, so many of them had said it's way less about the job title. You need to go find people that you want to become like, and you got to do hard things. And
Yeah. Come on.
my dad is a huge proponent of, you know, um, doing hard things is the only way that you're going to be refined, that you're going to grow. Because when there's pressure, right, it
Yeah.
bubbles up all of these insecurities or immaturities that you have to address head on. Versus if you're in a comfortable situation, you can just bury those things, and then
Yeah.
you grow up and you're a 45-year-old man with all the same insecurities and things that you didn't have to work through.
Just a couple things because you're spitting gold here. First of all, I just want to make sure we're all clear of the wisdom that Emily has. So this will be an Emily section here of wisdom. Like the idea of don't make a decision out of fear. I don't know that many of us have people in our life to remind us of that. Yet that is the most natural, least path, or the path of least resistance. Right? That's what we all do. Right? And so it's so interesting. Like the influence in your equation was unknown, right? But the independence, as you define it as comfort, like that was very known. Like if you just chose some other job, it was known, it was right there. So there is a fear of what happens. And I love what she did because I actually had a counselor do this for me years ago. And I think it's an amazing tool, which is write out the best and the worst scenario. Okay, it happens because you chose this. Okay, then what? What is day two after the worst of the best happens? And I remember even for me, how life altering that's been for me in my decision making framework, because you do start to realize like, oh, the worst thing, maybe like, I don't know, day two, I would just do X, Y, Z. And you're like, oh, that's not that bad. So kind of gets the fear a little bit tempered. Then the best thing, you're like, well, gosh, like that's the stuff I'm made for. Like that's the thing that I've always wanted to do. And so I think that is, yeah, shout out to your wife, Emily, because I think both of those is don't make a decision around fear. Okay, then what? Do the exercise of best and worst. That is gold. And I really hope the listeners out there take it because I think that's really, really good. But then also this idea that like, I think it's interesting that, and this is why it's a tension, right? Tensions we must manage, problems we solve. This is not a problem to solve, right? It's a tension to manage. And as I think about it, it's interesting to hear that you started because you wanted to say, hey, I'll give up some comfort, I'll give up some independence so that later on I'll get the independence, right? Later on, I'll get the things that I want and I value and all these things. And I'm doing it because I actually feel called, excited, these things. And I think that's just a good note to anybody is if you're like, I don't know what my influence should be. I don't know, make it be the thing you're excited by. Maybe we don't need to make it more complex than that. Like I love how simple that is. And maybe that's super helpful for y'all out there. That's like, how do I start? I don't know. Are you excited or not? Like, I think that's a really nice way to define like what impact influence that person is really excited about. But it's interesting. You said, okay, a year in, you started to feel it, right? You started to sense, oh, is it worth it? And that's kind of that gift of disillusionment type thing coming in, right? You started to feel it. So I think that is so good, Lincoln. I do want to flip because we have limited time, as you know. I'm gonna go to the other side. Okay, the other side of your mom's story is such a good one. Of I think for all of us that are married or our parents, we all know that we have literally signed up when we get married or become a parent. We've signed up to have very little flexibility, almost no autonomy, really a selfless life. All these things. Why? Because the influence, the impacts, right? The things that are on the other side of that are so much more beautiful to us. And so I think we're all making that decision. But that is something I heard in your mom's story around that nonprofit. But for you, I don't know if you want to expand on her story a little bit more on this other side, but like that, or even in your own journey, like you were just kind of mentioning how you've seen that play out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the nature of anytime that you get married or have a kid, to your point, you're intentionally saying, "Hey, I'm going to give up some of that independence, or pretty good bit of it
Yeah,
once you have a daughter, right?" It's like, wow, there's a lot of things, and you
yeah,
have some of the deepest joys and
yeah.
moments that you're just like, man, even after the midnight, you're holding this little, alien baby thing and it's screaming and you're
Yes,
like, how do I,
yes,
keep you alive? But then there's
yes.
the little giggles or the smiles when you get home. And it's just, it's so special. And so the beautiful thing that I've leaned in is that tension of, hey, don't don't elevate independence to a spot so high that you're choosing against some of those things that take sacrifice, but have some of the deepest joys and purpose in life. And for me personally, the leadership journey was one of those additional turning points for me of trying to
Yeah.
navigate this independence versus influence. Because yeah, after the first couple of years in the career, the hard work, the delayed gratification, but I got to a point where,
Yeah, you were doing still are doing very well on that side.
and the client side, I loved it. I was getting more comfortable in just the day-to-day role, and I could show up and do really good work. And I was then tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, we think that you could really thrive in leadership. And it was very exciting to me. It was also one of those things where I was like,
Here we go again.
here we go again, something new, something challenging. And I knew, because of what my VP did for me to get me launched into the career, it was
Yeah,
hard work. It was messy. It was
yeah,
everything that doesn't fit into a perfect cookie cutter
Yeah.
role. And I also went back to Emily there, and I was like, she'll for sure talk me out of this one too, because you know, it's a commitment. It's another step. And she was like, babe, same thing. Like, do you learn anything from being married? I was like, you have a unique opportunity to step into this, and we'll figure it out. But I think for me, similar to the marriage or the having a kid thing, I've had some of the deepest joys in my career
Yeah.
taking, and interviewing someone that I believe, man, has high potential, has strong values, has a desire to get to where, they want to go, and walking with them through the disillusionment, the stresses, the challenges, and getting to play a small part in watching them just flourish and thrive and
Yeah.
grow. That it's hard to even put words to the level of
Yeah.
impact that really is. And you can't do that with a pure, just flexible autonomy. Like, I can't just up and, take a
Yeah.
vacation anytime that I
You
want.
have more dependence in a
It's
sense.
no doubt. And so you're thinking about not just yourself,
Yeah.
and it's not a, man, I feel like I'm just chained to this career as a leader, but you're thinking about people beyond just you, your
Yeah.
wife, and your kid. And
Yeah.
there's a weight and a healthy pressure to it. And
Yeah.
I would say, it's one of those things, like, what a joy that I get to even step into that at my age and the opportunity, and
Yeah.
knowing I wasn't forced into that. Like, I
Yeah.
could have, and that's back to the independence piece, which I'm so grateful for. It became less of, man, I feel like this is my only option. And I have two really good options. Both have pros and cons. Where
Yeah.
do I feel like the maximum influence can be in this season?
Yeah.
And that's just a really fun decision making framework. And I wouldn't have had that at 22. Right. And so
Yeah.
that's the aspect of,
No
you got to
doubt.
lean into the hard work and create value before. But yeah, that's what I would tell you. I've lived
Yeah.
into and felt it.
Well, whether it's getting married, whether it's having kids, whether it's being great at a job and you become more of like an expert in the job itself, but then you want to train others to be that. It really is the tension. I think that clearly exists that you're talking about is the more that you want to impact different people's lives, the more you will have to sacrifice and give up for yourself. And we could call that independence, comfort, whatever you want to, because it literally takes a piece of yourself to then impact that other person. And I don't know. I mean, is that not the ultimate independence, right? Because you're choosing. That is a choice, and independence, like we said, is the autonomy of choice. Now, you may have made the choice to give up maybe what normal people call independence. Like, I can just, at 3 p.m., just I'm going to go do this thing. Maybe not. Not if you have these people counting on you. Whereas if you didn't make that choice, you had independence of choice, right? You could have. And so I think that's really good. So, like, we're going to go to two other places here before we end. The first is, one of the things that I've seen from you, and you've mentioned a lot as I've heard you give speeches and talks before, is this idea of the guardrails and the things that you've kind of placed in your life. And specifically for this podcast, this idea of you have to put some guardrails to keep this tension alive, right? Because when it gets hard, I mean, naturally, right? Like, you want to quit. And you said something already before, but you've told me this idea that mentors have told you do something hard in your 20s has been like such a almost a guardrail for you, like mentally, of that's the framework I'm living into. And that's helped you. Can you talk a little bit more about how that's helped you manage this tension?
Yeah, absolutely. I would argue the ability to grow in perspective and mindset is one of the most impactful things that you can do in your 20s, because in many ways, that is the lens that you look through life with. And if every challenge and obstacle you view as, oh my gosh, I got to escape,
Yeah.
you're going to get stuck, and you're going to
Yeah.
keep choosing, short term, whatever's right in front of you, path of least resistance. And I think having some of those foundational principles of what matters to us, what do we want to live into, it can help reset. Because in those emotional moments when something bad happens or it's really
Yeah.
frustrating, okay, I know what I'm feeling right now. I want
Yeah.
to escape or quit or do whatever. And then just to remind yourself, wow, like, for me, it's been pressure is a privilege. Like
Come on.
what a gift that I even
What a
get
line.
to think about the challenges of some of the nuances of leadership. And the other thing is, some of our good friends are dealing with some really challenging personal things right now. And just for Emily and I to be like, man, if the hardest things that we're dealing with are the professional aspects
Yeah,
of
that's right.
her residency or my work, that in and of itself is a
Yeah.
blessing. And so I think it, yeah, in many ways is a matter of perspective. And that's where surrounding yourself with mentors that will help call you not to what is easiest or, hey, the grass is greener, but walking with you through it. And
Yeah.
Emily's been that in so many ways for me. And I've tried to do that for her, because it's not like she's been immune to wanting to quit medical school or
Sure.
residency.
No doubt.
And sticking in it, looking back, we've never regretted those challenging seasons because of how much it's grown us.
Oh, so good. So good. Yeah. And I think that ability to put that almost guardrail or restriction of like, these are the things that I will submit to, right? It's a giving up of freedom. And I know you mentioned Tim Keller before. Both of us are big fans of his. I think a quote that helps, especially in this podcast, is freedom isn't the absence of restrictions, it's finding the right ones. Wow. Right. I mean, that's just like so good. And I think it's just so true of like, if you want to just live this like free life, I don't, report to anyone, talk to anyone personally, professionally, like, yeah, that's freedom, but is it really? Like, you got to define the word freedom. And I think that you're mentioning that today. So, Lincoln, I hate to say that it is the last question. This has been amazing. You've got so many great, even just one liners I wish we could unpack that are so good. But for the listener out there, regardless of their age, season of life, whatever it may be, what is your last call to action? What's the thing that if they're saying, gosh, this is quite a tension, how do I manage this? What would you like to leave them with?
Yeah, that's it's a good question. And I would say, first and foremost, when values are clear, decisions are easy.
Yeah.
And I would challenge anybody, and this is something that Emily and I have continued to try to do, is you gotta take some time to reflect on, hey, what are the values that we want our life to be marked by? Write them out. Take some time, debate, reflect, and once you can do that, I think the rest, when you're trying to manage the nuances of independence or autonomy, things become more and more clear. And so
Yeah.
another mentor, had shared, hey, people will judge you by your actions. You need to judge yourself by your intentions.
Wow.
And that, what a freeing thing, because for Emma and I, we're both driven, competitive people pleasers. If we choose to do something that is challenging, we're maybe choosing influence over independence. Someone could twist that and say, hey, it's you don't prioritize your family.
Yes.
And it could have been the core root of the intentions of it is the exact opposite of what that person had said.
Yeah.
And so we can't try to live, to please other people. And
Come on.
man,
Come on.
we got to weigh our hearts and say, okay, are our intentions pure in wanting to
Yeah.
do this versus that? Or for me, right, the bent is entrepreneurial, grow, build it. And I got to remember, hey, is that becoming an idol, right? There's a
Yeah.
tension to manage that we could go a whole separate podcast on. But I would say, yeah, take your time to really understand what are your values, weigh other people's advice, but don't take things out of context. And I've seen early in my 20s, when you ask a lot of people for advice, you get a lot of different answers, and you either go into analysis paralysis or you just take things out of context and it starts to derail. So that's what I would say is, lean into your values and don't make decisions based on fear.
Come on. Y'all, that was an amazing podcast. And as always, if you heard this tension, you're like, I'm struggling with it. Well, you found the right place. We're going to keep talking about other tensions, continue to be honest, having amazing guests like Lincoln Rock, sharing his story, sharing his wisdom. Lincoln, thanks for being on The Tension.
Thanks, Trev. Appreciate it.